Breaking news, markets soar and oil prices are down as the war in Iran may officially be reaching its conclusion as the Strait of Hormuz is finally reopened and there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. Back home in America, we're surprisingly seeing accountability for congressmen, Hasan Piker losing favorability with the Democrat elites, and Republicans once again voting against their base and supporting the Democrat policies that we have been campaigning against for nearly a decade now. My name is Ben Corriveau, and welcome to my show. Obviously, the big news of the day, and I had to restructure my show around this, is that it's looking like the Iran conflict is actually about to end. There's been a lot of confusion this week surrounding this because we started off the week with there being the Strait of Hormuz being closed. Then it was supposed to be opened. Trump then decided that he was going to close the Strait of Hormuz. Then he reopened it again. There was this whole talk about Lebanon and Israel, what was going on there. Ultimately, actions speak louder than words. So we'll see where this actually goes. But that's huge right there, that there's at least the potential for this conflict to finally be over. One thing that I did find interesting about this is that Trump made a specific post referencing that Lebanon was not part of the agreement, but that he was explicitly prohibiting Israel from attacking Lebanon. So that's quite interesting to see. I'm wondering if that's going to be tested. I hope not, but that would be certainly an interesting situation. But like I said, going back to the actual economic benefits of this, oil prices have been dropping as a result of this. I have this from CNN. Oil prices dropped sharply and stock futures surged Friday after the Iranian foreign minister said the Strait of Hormuz will be completely open for commercial transit during the remainder of the ceasefire. Brent crude, the global benchmark, fell to 10.8%, or fell 10.8% to $88.70 per barrel. WTI, the US benchmark, sank 11% to $81.20 per barrel. So that's huge right there. A 10 to 11% drop is huge. So hopefully we'll start seeing that in our gas prices in the coming weeks. But it wasn't just that. It was actually the stock market that actually rallied. We had the Dow futures rise 560 points, which is 1.16%, as well as the S&P 500 gaining about 0.8%, as well as the NASDAQ about 0.9%. So around 1% increases for the S&P or for the stock market. Again, this isn't huge, but it's gaining momentum, and this is likely due to the fact that now there's going to be more fuel or more oil entering the global economy. Therefore, prices can be lower because supply is higher. Shipping price, the fuel is going to offset some of the additions to pricing on various commodities, mostly food products, realistically, consumables. But it's looking pretty good. Hopefully, we can maintain this because if this holds and we continue to see these prices drop, then that would be huge for Trump and Republicans in the midterms. But like I said, this all relies on this maintaining its staying power, essentially, and ensuring that we have low prices here. But while this was going on, there was actually a bit of a controversy going on regarding FISA. So for those of you who don't know, this is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It essentially allows the U.S. government to spy on foreign entities not in the U.S., so without the use of a warrant. But the problem with this is that it also allows them to work with foreign intelligence agencies who are not required to get warrants on U.S. citizens. So therefore, they can exchange information without necessarily needing to find a warrant on a U.S. citizen. And that's why there's some problems with this. And I'm personally still against it, but Trump decided that he's in favor of it, which to me isn't actually that surprising. I know that a lot of people want me to are going to say that, oh, this is shocking and I can't vote for Trump anymore, especially the leftists, because they're always looking for that. But no, this is completely expected from him. Obviously, he's working on handling stuff in Iran. I wouldn't be surprised if he's handling stuff with Cuba, China, maybe a little bit with Russia. So there's a lot of foreign operations going on. It seems like right now his focus is on foreign policy. So that really does make sense why he would want this, because it gives him a significant amount of power to actually go in, get intelligence on these foreign operatives or foreign governments, while at the same time, it could theoretically be used against his political opponents, which is one of the reasons why I'm against it, because that's how it's been used previously. It's been used by the Biden administration, which explicitly targeted the Trump campaign, which was the initial Russiagate. I don't remember off the top of my head the official operation name, but that was a whole, oh, it was Operation Crossfire Hurricane. That was the whole thing where they fabricated evidence to use FISA and therefore spy on the Trump campaign, which is like seriously way worse than what Nixon did, and nobody was held accountable for that. But that was huge. So I can see why he's in favor of it now, because it's benefiting him, but that's not how you should work on politics. Politics isn't about what benefits you now, it's what's going to help the future. So it may be useful to us now, but in the future, when the other side uses it against us, that's not going to look too good, especially since they've already done it. So we really need to at least look at this, revise the policy. And actually, Lauren Boebert has been very outspoken about this. So I have this pulled up from Newsweek right now, where you can see that she's not going to approve an extension of Section 702, which was that essentially expands the FISA to allow for what I said essentially. That was passed in 2008, I believe. I'll put the text of FISA up so you can look at it yourself. You can go read everything about it, just so you know that I'm not misinforming you. But yeah, it's really a bad policy. This was basically an extension of the Patriot Act, which allowed a lot more surveillance, which I obviously think is a bad thing. I don't think the government should be able to check in on us the way that they are, but that is kind of what's happening. And hopefully Republicans will stand strong and resist this. I know that actually there's a lot of Republican leadership that is in favor of extending this. But like I said, I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't get extended, because FISA is bad policy. In addition to that, they've been actually publishing a lot of material to try to encourage the public to actually accept it. I know that the NSA released this. It's about FISA. It's basically an information sheet saying about why it's important that we have it and everything. Like I said, if you want to go look at it, it'll be in the description of this video. I personally don't agree with a lot of the stuff that it says in here. It may help us, but once again, like I said, as American citizens, we have a reasonable right to privacy, and this is very much an infringement on that, or it could be used as an infringement upon that. So, in addition to this, we actually got a new DOJ report this week that basically showed that the Biden administration has been weaponizing the DOJ to target Christians, pro-life Americans as a whole, but obviously the most prominent population of pro-life Americans are Christians, and of Christians, more of them are Catholic. So I was talking about this last week. Pope doesn't say anything about any of this stuff, where this is blatantly wrong. They're deliberately targeting the Catholic Church, and I really wish that he would maintain the same standard between the left and the right. Like I said, it's a good thing that he's holding the right accountable for certain things, but you need to hold the left accountable too. But this report here is actually pretty damning based on what it's saying, because it shows that the Biden DOJ, they closely worked with these abortion agencies, whether it be Planned Parenthood, I don't recall, the National Abortion Foundation, Feminist Majority Foundation. So they worked with these people to identify certain, they were essentially given by these organizations dossiers on people that these organizations wanted arrested or charged for various reasons, which the Biden administration then weaponized the FACE Act, which that whole act is used to protect both pro-life and pro-choice. I call them slaughterhouses, but they're pro-choice centers, which this isn't how it was actually being used in practice. In practice, it's been used to protect pro-abortion locations where they provide abortions while letting anything happen to the pro-life organizations. All this is happening. And At the same time, they made several statements about Christians and Catholics. I don't recall if it's in this here. If I can find it, I'll put it up. But they called Christians culty. They said it was culty to be a Christian, which is funny because Biden claimed to be a Catholic. But as you can see, I'll put up the full list here. There was a ton of stuff that came out of this. And it just goes to show that, yes, the Biden administration was doing a lot of weaponization that isn't really being, that nobody's really being held accountable for, which obviously that's not a good thing. But it does look like some Democrats may start to be held accountable for certain things, as Harmeet Dillon actually put up a post this week that she is going to sue Virginia if Governor Spanberger passes this bill. I think I talked about it a few weeks ago. I don't recall exactly which episode it was in, but I talked about this. Governor Spanberger is essentially passing a bill that would outlaw most firearms in the state of Virginia, which is crazy because one, Virginia is a purple state, and two, that's one of the most 2A states in the country, and they're being targeted for it. So luckily, Harmeet Dillon says that she's going to file a lawsuit against the governor if this law actually does get passed, which hopefully it doesn't. But personally, what I'm hoping for is, because there's a lot of these laws being passed across the country that need to be challenged. So I'm hoping that Harmeet Dillon will actually go after a few of these other states that are doing this, because I know right now Rhode Island has a huge push for a lot of anti-gun legislation. Obviously, we have California has significant restrictions. Massachusetts has significant restrictions. A lot of these states, especially liberal states, realistically, have these strong restrictions. So I would like to see the assistant attorney general actually go out and sue these states to give us back our 2A rights, because that's absolutely ridiculous. The Second Amendment clearly says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And obviously this is an infringement, especially when you take into account all the previous legal precedent that we've had. So that's ridiculous. I know that there's been a lot of pushes for the 2A community to actually step up. And I'm really hoping that not only will Harmeet Dillon actually go and do this stuff, but I'm hoping that these 2A people will actually vote in this election, because obviously that's huge. But another thing that happened this week was some actually accountability for Congress members. So we had Representative Tony Gonzalez. He's a Republican in Texas. He is resigning from Congress. Luckily, he was the one who had an affair with a staffer who then lit herself on fire and died as a result of that. So obviously that's pretty drastic. I really can't believe that he hasn't resigned earlier, because this has been known for months now. I believe it came out, maybe it was around November. I think it was. It was a while ago. And this is actually the guy that Brandon Herrera won against. So I'm kind of hoping that we're able to get Brandon Herrera in there a little bit early, but we'll see. I don't know if that's going to happen. It would be nice, but I'm not going to say that it's certainly going to happen. And while Tony Gonzalez, the Republican, resigned from Congress, we also had Eric Swalwell. So he obviously, it came out that there were a ton of allegations against him for sexual misconduct, a few allegations of drugging and raping. And I do want to be clear that these are allegations. He's one of those people who you have to believe all women, whatever they say happened to them, no requirement for evidence. And I personally don't believe that. And I think that he's recognizing why we actually require evidence in our legal system, because I don't know if these allegations are true. If they are, then there should be evidence of it, and he will be held criminally accountable for it, which he certainly should be if they're true. But I also don't believe that we should just go and believe them if they don't have evidence of it. So we'll see how that turns out. Like I said, he suspended his campaign for governor, which that was huge. And it actually, believe it or not, benefited Democrats that he did that, because in California, it's actually it's not a ranked choice system. I don't recall the exact terminology for it, but it's only the top two candidates, regardless of party, actually are on the final ballot. So right now, there's actually two Republicans that are leading in California. Right now, it's Steve Hilton. And just for reference, I am using the latest polling from Emerson College. This was released yesterday, I believe. Yep. So this polling was released yesterday by Emerson College. So this is after Eric Swalwell resigned from Congress and stepped out of the governor race. So we have Steve Hilton, Republican, at 16.6% polling. Chad Bianco, Republican, at 14.4%. So both of these are Republicans. They're actually at the top of the ballot right now in California, which would be hilarious if they actually make it and win the governorship. But this is also kind of why it's heavily suspected that it wasn't Republicans that actually released this information to Eric Swalwell. It was Democrats who did it, because they've been pushing for Democrats to actually drop out of the race, so that way they aren't splitting the vote as much, and there will be a Democrat candidate, because it's almost certain that if a Democrat makes it into that final two, they will win the election, because California is such a Democrat state. It's the Democrat haven. But that's also why it's suspicious that so it actually took him a while to resign from Congress. Just to give some context on that, it took him a while to resign from Congress after being ousted from the governor race, basically forced out. But it seemed like he waited for Tony Gonzalez to resign from Congress first before resigning himself. And this obviously makes sense, because Tony Gonzalez was a Republican, Eric Swalwell was a Democrat. So it balances out. It's an even trade. But this actually, I've heard both sides of this, that this was great for Republicans because at least he's out and they're going to replace him with somebody else. Or some people are saying that this was bad for Republicans because the Democrats weren't forced to vote to actually expel him from Congress, which I do think is actually a good point. The other thing, too, is that, I mean, nowadays, Democrats, the only thing that they stand for is to be anti-Trump. So they really are going to fill it with just another anti-Trump person. So I think that this is overall a net neutral, if not a little bit net negative for conservatives in this situation, just because, I mean, obviously, Democrats won the governor thing by that, because it's bumping up some other candidates, which I'll get to now. So for Democrat candidates, because like I said, we had the two Republicans leading 16.6% and 14.4% respectively. We had Tom Steyer, he's the head Democrat right now. He's running at 14.1%. And then behind him, there's two behind him, but I'm going to only announce the more prominent one because I'll explain why. But it's Katie Porter. She's running at about 10.3%. So she's pretty far behind. But what I'm suspecting is going to happen, and this is almost certain, is that Katie Porter is going to be the next one to be ousted from the governor race. And the reason for that is because she's already had so many problems in the past. I mean, it came out months ago when she first announced her run for governor, that she has allegedly abused her ex-husband, where she poured a pot of boiled potatoes on his head. She's also on camera being extremely rude to her staff members. So I would be not surprised at all if she was targeted. Maybe the next week is a little bit too short of a time period, but definitely the next month, I think she'll be out of the race, because Democrats are ruthless. They'll turn on each other for literally anything. And this is just evidence of it, because they need to win California. If they don't win California, it's going to look bad for them across the country. So we'll see. But obviously the Democrats aren't too worried about keeping their moderate base, because the top Democrat candidate for governor in California, Tom Steyer, actually this week put up an article on X. This is an excerpt from his article. Pretty much just the intro. If you want to read it, like I said, the link is going to be in the description. You can go and read it for yourself. It's really insane, some of his policies. But he's talking about, I've made it clear, ICE must be abolished. ICE is acting like a criminal organization, carrying out indiscriminate racial profiling and using violence, intimidation, terrorism, and the murder of Americans to extend Trump's rule by fear. It's not enough for Democrats to simply engage in rhetoric and stand against ICE or Trump. California must build a system that fights fire with fire. To stop this authoritarian takeover, we must counter ICE head on and go after both their agents on the streets and their leadership within the Department of Homeland Security. How do we do this? The same way we took on the mob. Put ICE agents and their leadership in jail for their crimes, because that's how you take on a violent extremist group and win. So this is obviously extremely radical in the first place and dangerous, because the last time this happened, we had a civil war, which obviously I'm against that. I really don't think that a lot of the leftists that push these ideologies realize what they're asking for, because this is seriously dangerous, and I don't think that they're prepared for it whatsoever. But that's insane. And the other thing too is, what crimes have they actually committed? I mean, seriously, if you want to talk about like Alex Preddy and Renee Good and whether or not those were legal, they were legal. I mean, there was reasonable threat to the officers' lives in both situations. If you want to talk about morals, then that's, I guess, up to you. I tend to believe that in the instance where somebody's at least endangering you or others, it is reasonable to use violent force. But if you want to say that they could have used nonviolent measures, I'm not going to fault you for it, because I do think that could have been handled better. But in reality, what crimes were committed? I mean, nobody's actually specifying crimes. They're just saying it. Again, they don't actually know what they're talking about. They just claim that there's crimes. And it's like what, I forget the Soviet Union official's name was, but it's show me the man and I'll show you the crime. That's what they're doing here. They don't care about what crimes were actually committed. They're looking to charge these people, but they don't care. Like I said, they don't care about what crimes they've committed. They just want to charge them for whatever they can get them on. So they're going to find the person and then look in their background and find whatever charges they can bring up against them. And that's how it's going to go. And that's just not the way that our system's meant to work. And they're even going, not only are they going after the people who are enforcing our laws, our federal laws, but they're actually targeting journalists too, independent journalists. This week they proposed, it was California AB 2624, which this was just introduced. I don't believe that it's gone into committee or anything like that yet, but this is titled the Stop Nick Shirley Act, I believe is what it's called. And the whole premise of this act is to install fines for people who attempt to use independent journalism to expose different fraud, crime, whatever you want to call it. And most of it, I actually think is reasonable, where it specifies that you are not allowed to publicly post or publicly display any personal information of people within certain designations that are with the intent of inciting somebody else or inciting violence against that person or threatening them, which I think that's actually pretty reasonable. The problem comes in, this is section 6218.19, subsection B. This is a person, business, or association shall not publicly post or publicly display, disclose, or distribute on internet websites or social media the personal information or image of a designated immigration support services provider, employee, volunteer, or client if that individual or any individual, entity, or organization authorized to act on their behalf has made a written demand of that person, business, or association to not disclose the personal information or image. A written demand made under this paragraph shall include a statement declaring that the individual is subject to the protection of this section and describing a reasonable fear for the safety of the individual or of any person residing at the individual's home address. Based on a violation of subdivision A, a demand made under this paragraph shall be effective for 4 years, regardless of whether or not the individual's affiliation with the designated immigration support services facility has expired prior to the end of the 4-year period. And the reason that this is so dangerous right here is because this means that as long as you say that you're protected under that, you're protected under it. That's it. There's no recourse. You can't be found not to be under protection of that, which is absolutely insane. And this is the problem with it. This one section, it's overreaching, and it's saying, okay, so yes, we're saying that you can't do it if you're going to threaten somebody or you're going to incite violence against them. You're going to tell somebody to go attack them, which that's all reasonable. That's actually pretty reasonable requirements. But not only are we going to do that, we're also going to say that you can't actually publish any of this stuff as long if they say that they don't want it. That's it. You can't publish it whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it incriminates them or not. You are the one who's the criminal now, which is absolutely insane. Hopefully, I know Nick Shirley's been fighting this. Hopefully, that'll actually continue, because that is just absolutely insane that the people who are now doing the job of the legacy media by actually reporting the facts and exposing fraudsters are being held criminally, or are attempted to be being held criminally liable. So that's just absolutely ridiculous. We also had Mom Donnie, the most economically illiterate mayor of New York that I think that we've ever had, New York City. It's just absolutely insane. So he had a clip go viral about his state-funded grocery stores, which I will play right now.
New York City, it is time for a grand experiment once again. Just as LaGuardia used government to respond to the challenges of the Great Depression, we will use government to respond to rising prices and unaffordable groceries. Since the pandemic, grocery prices have gone up, and they haven't come back down. Between 2013 and 2023, grocery prices increased in New York City by nearly 66%, significantly higher than the national average. During our campaign, we promised New Yorkers that we would create a network of city-owned grocery stores, one in each borough. And we are here today to celebrate the site of the Manhattan store, La Marqueta, which will be open by 2029. Now, here's how it works. The city will subsidize a core set of staples. A private operator will run the store, but they answer to the standards that the city will set. These standards include requirements that at our stores, bread will be cheaper, eggs will be cheaper, grocery shopping will no longer be an unsolvable equation.
So in that clip, you heard him talk about prices have gone up nearly 66% from 2013 to 2023, which is obviously insane. Which, like I said, I'm not going to speak to that. I believe that a lot of it is actually due to New York policies, but I don't have the facts on that. I'm not going to speculate outside of, like I said, just initial looking at that, because obviously if it weren't exclusive to New York City, we would expect to see that nationwide, and that's just not the case. But his plan is to implement state-sponsored grocery stores, obviously, because socialists only want one thing, and that's bigger government and less rights for the individuals. So it doesn't work out mathematically. He wants to open this by 2029, and his plan is to have the city use taxpayer dollars to subsidize this market. It's going to be under private ownership, but the private owners must work with the government, the state government, or not the state government, the local government, and that's the plan. And what they're going to do is they're going to force this market to sell bread and eggs at lower than market cost. And so obviously that sounds good if you don't understand economics at all. But let's actually dive into that. So what happens when you start subsidizing stuff like this? Well, first of all, markets themselves already operate on extremely thin margins. You can't really price up much food by much, because there's so many different ways to get it, whether that be through local farms, various markets across the country, wherever you are, really, there's probably going to be more than one market. So that's already a problem right there, is that it's extremely thin margins on the products being sold. So therefore, there's not much profit to be made, and it's going to definitely require more government funds to be pumped into this than would typically be required. But not only that, when you sell certain products at lower than market costs, what's going to happen is there's one of two things. And actually, potentially both of them could happen at the same time. First is that you have these goods are just going to be sold out quicker, because you look at supply and demand. you have a certain amount of supply, which you can't really increase or decrease the supply of eggs, for example, unless you have more chickens. But even then, there's a certain time period that you must wait before the hens lay their eggs and everything. So you have demand that stays relatively the same, supply stays relatively the same. But as price decreases, demand increases. So therefore, you have the same amount of product that is now being bought up at a quicker rate because it's more affordable. People have more of a demand for it. So you're going to quickly run out of supply. And when there's only, like I said, there's only so far that you can actually increase the supply of goods for this, especially like I said, eggs. Bread is a little bit easier, I guess, because you could make that in different ways. So that on one side is going to happen. Then you also have on the actual supply side, where if you mandate that these cheaper prices are implemented, in order to actually maintain market profits, what they're going to do is they're going to buy cheaper products. But that means cheaper bread, cheaper eggs in certain circumstances, which may mean that the eggs are smaller, they're not as high quality, they come from chickens that aren't as high quality, and therefore the quality of your goods is going to decrease, which, like I said, this is already going to be a problem in addition to the increased demand. So you're going to have more people chasing fewer goods, as well as the quality decreasing. So people aren't going to be happy about that. And on top of all that, so those are already problems, but this is also a solution that is strictly scoped to New York City. So when you have lower prices in a location that are not available elsewhere, people are going to go into that location, buy the goods at the cheaper price, and then sell them at the regular market price, so they can have a higher margin return on their profit, on their goods, on their expenses. Which, this is all common sense. I'm not going into deep economic theory here or anything like that. And if you just think about it rationally, like logically, you can see that this stuff doesn't work. This policy doesn't work. And that gets me to his other big policy that he revealed on tax day, which was the pied-à-terre tax, which I'll play now.
I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history. This is an annual fee on luxury properties worth more than $5 million, whose owners do not live full-time in the city. Like for this penthouse, which hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin bought for $238 million. This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end. This tax will raise at least $500 million directly for the city. It'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. As mayor, I believe everyone has a role to play in contributing to our city, and some a little bit more than others. Happy Tax Day, New York.
This tax obviously isn't going to work. Again, it sounds good. This is what socialists do. They find something that sounds good, but has no basis in reality whatsoever. So here they're going to charge an annual fee on all properties that are worth more than $5 million where the owner does not live there. So this sounds like they're taxing the rich, but that's not actually how this is going to work. Because obviously what he said is that they're reaping the benefits of being in New York City. If they don't live there, then they aren't using city resources, which means that they aren't actually using any of the state sewage. They're not using the state power. They're not using any of the state transportation, none of that. So they're paying into the system and not using any of those things, which are actually benefiting New Yorkers. So you have that going on. If you start implementing a tax on them, which is essentially what it is, these people are going to try to leave. They're going to try to sell their properties, which I don't even know if they're going to be able to, because nobody's going to want to buy there in the first place. So nobody's really going to actually invest in New York City. And what you're going to do is you're going to lose out on the revenue. Like I said, that they're paying taxes. They're paying your property taxes that are already pretty high in New York City. They're also paying people in New York City to keep up the house for them. So those are people who are going to lose their jobs, New Yorkers who are going to lose their jobs. So it's not, it doesn't work out in practice. Like I said, this is the same thing with the millionaire's tax, which I thought was funny because right after I did that, it came out that Massachusetts lost billions of dollars on their millionaire's tax, which is just hilarious. All these policies are just absolutely insane on their face. But that's kind of what leftists do. I mean, they deny policies that work. They say that these radical policies aren't being implemented, and then they go and implement them themselves. For example, this we have from Fox News, actually. This is in California. California's Medi-Cal program, which is their essentially state-sponsored healthcare. It was found to be funding transgender surgeries for illegal aliens, which this kind of hits two radical policies at once, where Democrats have been saying for at least a few years now. I don't recall exactly when this all started, but they were saying that illegals don't receive any healthcare benefits, which this story obviously refutes. And the second thing is the transgender for all. They're literally funding people to get transgender surgeries that are illegal aliens. It's just ridiculous. And this is why I will say that unless the Democrat Party changes their views extremely, I will not vote for them, because these are just absolutely insane policies. So we have that. We also have the open borders policies, obviously, which I can't believe that a lot of leftists support this in reality, because what it does is it actually introduces slave labor into the U.S. I know that they want the voting bloc, but I would expect these leftists to actually have some level of actual standards that they maintain to themselves. But it doesn't seem like that, because I mean, you can see here, this is a graph from CBP of border encounters from the Biden administration from 23-24 compared to the Trump administration 25-26, where you can see the Trump administration has a drastic decrease in the number of encounters at the border, which typically relates to the amount of people actually entering the country. So that's obviously insane. These people are coming into our country, taking our jobs. They're buying real estate, which Americans can no longer purchase homes. So that's causing problems because we only have a limited amount of real estate. So they're obviously taking up some of that supply, which they shouldn't be able to, but they are. So we have that. We have the radical policy of abortion up to and after birth for anybody who wants it for any reason whatsoever. Obviously, this was by the former Virginia governor. I believe at the time he was the governor. It's Ralph Northam. This was in 2019, where he actually went on radio and said, third trimester abortions are done in cases where there may be severe deformities. There may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I get, like, some people, I believe it's wrong to kill babies, which I think everybody should agree with that, but not everybody does. But I can see at least some of the arguments for abortion in terms of the way that they thought about it, where it should be safe, legal, and rare. Like, I think that's actually a reasonable standard. Obviously, I'm against it, but that's at least reasonable. These people take it to the extreme and say, yes, you should be able to get an abortion whenever you want, for whatever reason you want. Even if the baby, you give birth to the baby, yeah, we can kill it then too. And this is radical. I know a bunch of my leftist friends say that, oh no, that's not radical. I know you think it's radical, but that's not radical. Tell me. And I mean this seriously. Let's go through each of these positions. So healthcare for illegals. So the Democrat position is we should be giving healthcare for free to everybody. No restrictions, nothing. If they're in this country illegally, it doesn't matter. The Republican position, maybe let's not give it to illegal aliens who are essentially coming into our country and they're net takers in terms of federal benefits. So I mean, we have that. Tell me which of those is reasonable. Then we have obviously the transgender stuff. Should we be providing transgender surgeries for minors? The Democrat position is yes. Anybody who says that they need this surgery should be able to get it, regardless of the consequences, regardless of any of the problems. They should have it. Republicans, maybe we shouldn't give these radical surgeries, life-altering, life-changing surgeries to kids, minors. Then we have open borders. Democrats, let's let anybody in, no vetting whatsoever. There's no reason that we should vet people. No humans illegal. They need to enter our country illegally. Republicans, let's not do that. Let's actually have a legal process for people to go through. We have laws. People need to follow those laws. We have the Democrat position on abortion. You should be able to have an abortion for any reason, whenever you want, even after the child is born. A lot of Republicans now are more liberal in their thinking on abortion, where they're fine with it being safe, legal, and rare. Obviously, I'm against that, but that's the thing. A lot of these policies are significantly more radical on the left side than they are on the right side. But the right is always portrayed as the far right. They're the radicals. They're the ones who are coming up with these insane policies, where Republicans are actually maintaining the status quo that we've had, or attempting to revert back to the status quo that we had prior to all these revolutions that the left pushed. Really, I mean, it's just absolutely insane that Republicans are considered to be the radicals when we're the ones seeking to preserve normality. And this is probably best evidenced by Hasan Piker's rise in the Democrat Party. Obviously, this week he spoke at Yale, and I'll play his clip right now. This clip went viral for obvious reasons when you see it, but here it is.
The fall of the USSR was one of the greatest catastrophes of the 20th century. Just wait, listen, maybe you'll agree. Not only was there incalculable harm done to every single country under its banner, child prostitution, skyrocketing suicide rates, life expectancy plummeting, but America was no longer contested around the globe. And it is precisely because of the end to that multipolarity that we saw accelerated neoliberalism that is devastating every Western nation right now. Unlimited and unchecked greed. Our successes are leading to our own demise and the demise and collapse of the liberal system. The U.S. has produced disaster after disaster after disaster.
And in this clip, Hasan Piker, he says that the fall of the USSR was one of the greatest catastrophes of the 20th century, which is quite funny. And I will give him some credit on it. I know. I'm going to do it. He was right that there were some problems when the USSR disbanded. There were a lot of problems. I'm not going to deny that. Obviously, when you have a huge totalitarian government, authoritarian government, that breaks apart into several satellite states, it's natural that you're going to have a lot of destruction and problems when these people come out, because they don't know how to live with freedom. They will elect a dictator, or in some instances, they'll just be ruled by whoever's the most powerful. That's completely understandable. It's horrific. But what he doesn't take into account is, obviously there were a ton of other tragedies or catastrophes that happened in the 20th century, whether that be the Holocaust, World War I, World War II. We could also go in and talk about the Cold War. I mean, obviously there were a lot of deaths over there, whether that be Vietnam, Korea. We had a lot of wars during this whole period, but he singles out the USSR as being the fall of the USSR as being the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. And another thing that he doesn't mention is the actual human toll of the USSR. So I have this pulled up. This is a Wall Street Journal article from several years ago. I believe this is 2017, where it actually goes through some of the numbers. So we have, on the conservative end, approximately 20 million Soviet citizens that were put to death by the Soviet regime. And that's not a catastrophe to Hasan Piker. We also have, as you can see here, the breakdown. So this was 200,000 killed during the Red Terror. We had 11 million dead from famine and the killing of all kulaks. We had 700,000 executed during the Great Terror. 400,000 more that were executed for various reasons throughout 1929 and 1953. 1.6 million that were killed during forced population transfers, and at least 2.7 million dead in their gulags, labor colonies, and special settlements. So obviously this is pretty bad. They also actually enlisted a lot of their prisoners and forced them to fight in wars. So I don't know if that's included in the gulag counts or not. But the other thing that you have to consider too is, what about the communist nations that the Soviet Union actually formed? Well, if you actually count the deaths in those as well, we approach 100 million deaths from socialism and communism. And this kind of defeats Hasan's whole purpose in saying that the fall of the USSR was a great catastrophe, which it certainly was a catastrophe, just not as great as he makes it seem, because in reality, I would say that putting an end to at least 20 million deaths in the USSR alone, and putting basically the world on notice that socialism isn't going to be tolerated by the US, that we really realistically saved millions, if not tens of millions of lives doing that. And Hasan Piker doesn't want you to know that, because he's a socialist. He wants you to think that socialism can work, but in reality, it has never worked. It never will work, because it doesn't actually fit in the bounds of reality. There's only two ways to actually get you to do stuff. You either have to incentivize it or disincentivize not doing it, which communism doesn't really have a way to incentivize it. I guess that what they will do is that they'll incentivize you by saying that if you do work, you'll join the higher ups and you'll actually get to operate in the capitalist world. But that's not what these socialists actually want. They want to bring you down. They want to say, no, we're going to put you in jail. We're going to kill you if you don't do what we tell you to do. And that's socialism. Like it or not, that's what it is. That's what it has been time and time again. And Hasan Piker keeps on pushing for this. Obviously, he's a leftist. He's a avowed socialist, and he's actually turning a lot of young Americans to support this ideology. I know quite a few of them who are big fans of his. And it's just not based in reality whatsoever. They don't actually think about these things. And luckily, it's seeming like some people on the left are starting to recognize that he's actually a problem for the Democrat Party, which it depends on who you're reaching out to. So first, I want to show the pro Hasan Piker side of the Democrat Party, which was obviously, this was by Ezra Klein. He wrote an article, and right now I have the New York Post pulled up just because this is kind of important to this. Ezra Klein wrote an article for the New York Times titled, "Hasan Piker is Not the Enemy." And he later changed the name of the article to "Why the Left Doesn't Have a Liberal," or "Why There Isn't a Liberal Joe Rogan." So he changed this because Hasan Piker is hugely divisive in the Democrat Party, because obviously the Democrat Party is struggling with moderates. All of their policies are radical, and moderates don't want, like, they don't want half of these policies. Republicans have more policies in common with the moderates than the far left does, the Democrat Party. It's just absolutely insane. And so let's actually get into this article by Ezra Klein to see what he actually says. And obviously this is pretty interesting, because he's talking about how we need to support Hasan Piker in the Democrat Party, or why Democrats should support him. And obviously, like I said, he's already pretty radical. He doesn't necessarily think through a lot of the concepts that he's actually pushing for. But this quote right here, "That brings me to a more important than it might look controversy that has burst out over the leftist streamer Hasan Piker. He had a breakout moment over the past year as Democrats began obsessing over the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan, and Piker, who mixes leftist politics with the bro-ish aesthetic, was proffered as a possible answer. A category error, because the whole point of Rogan's political power is that his show mostly avoids politics," which obviously that's true. Joe Rogan is a moderate. I mean, he's basically the middle of the road on any issue that you got. If you want to know what the American people are thinking on average, he's the guy to ask. So he definitely has a good place in American politics, despite the fact that he avoids politics. But let's get to some of the quotes that Hasan Piker has actually had, and this is continuing in that New York Times article. But pick over Piker's years of streaming, and you can find offensive things he said. Among them, that America deserved 9/11. So that should be disqualifying automatically. Unfortunately, it's not, because the Democrats hate America. But there's that. His favorite flag is Hezbollah's flag. Obviously, that's a foreign terrorist organization that he's supporting. Again, anti-America. And then his final point, that a liberal Zionist is akin to a liberal Nazi. So he's extremely radical, absolutely insane. I seriously can't believe, I can believe it, because the Democrat Party has left their traditional base so far behind that they can't help it but put out this stuff. And this is just absolutely insane that Hasan Piker, he's such a joke. I mean, the only relatively good thing about him is that he doesn't make all of his politics about Trump, if you want to call that a good thing. But yeah, he's just absolutely insane. And that's not even the worst of his rants that he's going on, which I'll actually play the clip right now.
People that they can afford housing in Berkeley. I don't know how that works.
My understanding is that the property owners who have properties there choose just not to rent it at all.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those mother. Murder those mother. The street. Let the streets soak in their red capitalist bloods.
Yes, you heard that right. The streets need to run red in capitalist blood. That's exactly what he said. So he's pretty clear that he wants violence. Like I said, these people I don't think that they actually understand what they want or what they're calling for. He might actually understand what he's calling for, because obviously he seems prepared. In this instance, he wants the streets to run red in capitalist blood, which I don't know if he realizes this, but that means that he may have to kill his neighbor. He may be fighting his family members who disagree with him. Anybody who disagrees with him must be killed, if that's what he actually believes. But realistically, most Americans don't want that. And this is why there's actually been some pushback on his support of the Democrat Party, and why they're actually trying to push him out and make him more of a radical figure that isn't part of the Democrat Party, because moderates don't like this stuff. They don't like being told that you want to kill anybody who supports something that you don't like, because who wants to hear that? That's absolutely insane. We live in a society where we're supposed to work with our neighbors and actually communicate and work together to create a better environment for people. But instead, he's out here saying that we need to kill our neighbors, which obviously is absolutely abhorrent. But some people agree with him and actually act on this. Right now, we have a clip from, this is Frontline's Turning TPUSA, where one of their reporters, who actually goes out to these leftist protests and interviews people, she was assaulted while at this protest. Her name was Savannah Hernandez, and I'll play the clip now.
Yes, we did. We stopped people from hitting you because you were
I was standing here for an hour.
If we didn't help you, you would have been
and
attacked.
started attacking me.
We told them to stop.
I didn't do anything.
But you're like trying to play victim so hard when we were literally.
Okay, so I have all this on camera. It's fine. And because we're Minneapolis, you can't press charges against any of these people either. Anyway, so yeah, there we go. There we go, guys. There we go.
There's 1,000 people
Minneapolis, incredible. What am I gonna do?
Yeah, so you can see she's just walking around. She's trying to have conversations. They're blowing whistles in her face, shouting in her ears, which is verbal assault. And then she actually gets physically assaulted by several people, it's just ridiculous. These people are absolutely insane. They need to be locked up. There's no excuse for this level of violence to even reach this, to reach this level in the first place. You need to have many things go wrong in your society first. And there are plenty of reasons why this shouldn't be allowed. I can't believe that police didn't arrest them on the spot. I mean, maybe they did. I haven't seen anything on it, but just absolutely insane. These people need to go to jail. They're crazy. They are not fit for living in public society, polite society, however you want to term it. No place in polite society for people like this. If you're going to attack people both physically and verbally because you disagree with them, then you have no place in polite society. It's end of the road. That's it. And these people don't just target, because obviously Savannah Hernandez, she's fairly big, but not like a huge figure. But Erica Kirk actually this week, also from Turning Point, unsurprisingly, she had to cancel her travel to an event that she was hosting with the vice president, where she apparently received a lot of death threats for it, which, like I said, absolutely ridiculous. These people have no place in polite society. If you're going to threaten somebody because you disagree with their beliefs or what they're saying, then you should go to jail. I have no problem saying that. There's no reason that you should be able to threaten people, or at least to this level either. So that happened. There was some speculation that this happened because the event was mostly, it was very empty. From some reporting, that's what it seems like. I'm not going to lie about it. That's what it seemed like, which is surprising since it was the vice president and Erica were supposed to be there. But yeah, she had to cancel her event. And the craziest thing about this is that we don't even know if these supposed threats were from crazy leftists, or if it was from conservatives who follow people like Candace Owens. Like I said, I don't like naming names, but I'm naming her explicitly because I'm going to be going over her statement on this whole thing too. But so we don't know who's actually targeting her in the first place. And some speculation is that it was because it was empty. But my response to that is that makes no sense because the vice president is there. If it were because it was so empty, then the vice president would have canceled too. That obviously doesn't make any sense. And if it were so dangerous that, and this is the other claim, is that it was so dangerous for Erica Kirk, but it wasn't dangerous enough for J.D. Vance. The reason that happened is if you are only targeting one person, which Erica Kirk is much more of a media figure right now than J.D. Vance is, whether you like it or not. There are more people targeting her, and it could just be at her house where she's traveling from, maybe her airplane or her vehicle. There are so many different instances that it could be reasonable why she is unable to attend, but J.D. Vance is still able to attend. But these people don't want to hear it. So let's get to Candace Owens' statement on this. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's go to Mary Margaret's. So this is from Mary Margaret Olohan. She's the White House correspondent for the Daily Wire, and she just goes over essentially what this was. She got a statement from Turning Point. So it says that people were doxing her travel location, trying to track her arrival and departure. There were multiple direct threats against Erica specifically, ultimately led to her security assessment that they couldn't guarantee her safety, which is obviously a big problem because her husband was just assassinated, 7 months ago? So it's not unreasonable to be fearful for your life, especially when you're being targeted. You're receiving so many of these threats that are explicitly towards you. People are trying to track your location. So that's completely rational to be worried about that. But let's get to Candace Owens. Stop. This is exhausting. You pulled out because of bad ticket sales. For the same reason TP Faith had to reschedule the Pastor Summit and various other events quietly. People don't believe you and don't line up for you because you struggle to tell the truth about even the most basic facts. Where is the video of Charlie appointing you as CEO weeks before his death? The Secret Service sits above your security team. Were there actually a viable threat, the vice president would not have continued the event. Your closest threat is the SHIT. I'm sorry about that. I almost almost used some harsh language there. Public relations team you hired that continues to operate under the delusion that they are smarter than the public. They aren't. Now, this is quite funny coming from her because obviously, as I said, there are quite a few reasons why Erica may have been too dangerous for Erica to attend the event, but it was still possible for J.D. Vance to attend the event. But the other thing that I find interesting about this is that she explicitly says people don't believe you and don't line up for you because you struggle to tell the truth and even the most basic facts, which is funny because it's almost like somebody has been telling people that Erica Kirk is lying about everything, and that somebody's name might happen to be Candace Owens. So this is an instance of Candace creating a problem and then pointing at the person that she's creating the problem for and blaming them for it. It's absolutely insane. There's no logic here whatsoever. And I understand that some people follow Candace. I liked Candace before. Like, I got into her probably about a month or two before she left the Daily Wire. I was excited for her first episode to come out. And then it was just miserable. Like, she has gone off the deep end. And I'm willing to say that. If you watch her, I hope that you actually do your research on some of this stuff because she says a lot of crazy stuff. Obviously, I don't vet everything that she says, but a lot of it seems to be based on loose evidence. She's not very clear about it. She says that she brings receipts, but nothing ever actually comes of those receipts because they don't exist, or they're based on essentially misrepresented wording. She's misleading people on how she's wording things. It's a lot of stuff like that. And I really hope that people start to see that for what it is, because Turning Point is what got Trump elected in 2024. And with it basically on the sidelines and Candace Owens attempting to destroy it, it's no surprise that we're looking to face problems in the midterms. Like I said, it may be better than we're anticipating, but I can't guarantee that. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future. Nobody can. And right now it's not looking good for Republicans, but she's just doing everything in her power to make things worse. And like I said before, Democrats are so radical now that it's like there's no way that you can actually accept them and not be radical. It's just crazy. If you want any sort of moderate policies, you have to vote Republican. And that's not the way it should be. You should be able to get the best of both worlds by actually having debates between parties. You should have good policies on both party sides. But right now, that's not the instant. That's not the case. And even right now, it's Republicans are turning on their base and trying to implement policies that people don't generally support that are Republicans. And obviously this started last week with the Dignidad Act by Representative Maria Salazar. And this week it's a bill to extend temporary protected status for Haitian refugees. This passed the House of Representatives with 7. Initial reporting said 6. I did look into this, and it was 7 Republicans that voted with Democrats to pass this. And the number, the 6 figure comes from them voting to agree to the passing of the bill. So it was just a secondary vote for no real reason. The first vote was the one that actually voted in favor of this act, and there were 7 Republicans who voted for it. And I'm going to name them now. So if these are your representatives, you can call them and hold them accountable for this, because if you're a Republican, you should be against this, because the whole problem with the temporary protected status is that allows illegals to stay in the country for a longer period of time without any need to have like any documentation or anything like that. They can just come across into the country and they can't be deported for any reason. And they're trying to legalize these citizens because on the Democrat side, they want a voter base, and for the Republican side, they want cheap labor, which puts Americans out of jobs. And that's just the reality of it. I don't like it either way. I don't support it. We need all illegals deported. I don't care if they committed violent crimes or not. They did commit a crime entering the country illegally, and they need to be held accountable for that. But these 7 Republicans are Michael Lawler of New York, Don Bacon of Nebraska, Mario Diaz-Balart of Florida, Brian K. Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Carlos A. Jimenez of Florida, Nicole Maliotakis of New York, and Maria Elvira Salazar of Florida, which, once again, not a surprise. She voted, or she actually proposed the Dignidad Act, which, like I said, I was really aggravated that that just broke the news last week when literally that was proposed in 2025. But these people are absolutely ridiculous. I hesitate to say that they should be primaried because I don't know what Democrats they're running against, but these people need to be held to account, and there needs to be some sort of accountability for these people voting against the overwhelming belief in the Republican Party that all illegals need to be deported, and that we shouldn't be allowing these illegals to stay in the country for longer than they need to. Sorry to end the show on that note, but I'm hoping that eventually we can create a better world for it, and that's kind of why I'm doing this stuff. Like I said in my last episode, I don't get paid for this. I do this all free. So if you could like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Obviously, I do this every single week, so I'll see you next week.